Eliza's hands trembled as she spotted the distinct phoenix ring on the billionaire's finger, identical to the one her dying mother refused to sell even as medical bills threatened to drown them. Her whispered observation would shatter a century of carefully guarded family secrets, revealing not just her true father, but an inheritance stolen through betrayal and lies. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment where in the world you're watching from. Let's go. A single sentence can change everything. For Eliza Holay, a 24-year-old waitress drowning in her mother's medical bills, that sentence was a simple observation. For Gideon Pierce, a man insulated from the world by billions of dollars, it was a crack in the foundation of his entire life. The fluorescent lights of the corner booth diner hummed a monotonous tune, a sound Eliza knew better than her own heartbeat. It was the soundtrack to her life, the sizzle of burgers on the griddle, the clatter of cheap ceramic plates, the low murmur of conversations that never seemed to change. At 9 p.m. on a Tuesday, the diner was in its nightly lull, a brief respite between the dinner rush and the late-night crowd. Eliza leaned against the cool stainless steel counter, rolling her shoulders to work out a knot of exhaustion. Every muscle ached with a fatigue that was more than physical. It was the soul-deep weariness of watching her mother, Laura, slowly fade in a sterile beige hospital room. The bell above the door chimed, pulling Eliza from her thoughts. A man stepped inside, and an invisible curtain of silence seemed to fall over the diner. He wasn't just well-dressed. He was sculpted from a different material than the rest of the world. His suit, a charcoal gray so dark it was nearly black, fit him with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel. His shoes gleamed even under the diner's grimy lights. He had the kind of quiet, absolute confidence that doesn't need to be announced, it simply is. The few remaining patrons instinctively lowered their voices. He chose a booth in the corner, sliding onto the cracked vinyl seat with an economy of motion. Eliza grabbed a menu and a glass of water, her professional smile pasted on. "Welcome to the corner booth. Can I get you started with something?" The man didn't look at the menu. His eyes, a startlingly clear shade of blue, met hers for a brief, dismissive moment. "Just coffee. Black." His voice was low and resonant, a cello in a room of tin whistles. "Coming right up," Eliza said, retreating to the counter. Her friend and fellow waitress, Chloe, sidled up to her. "Get a load of Misser. Moneybags. Thinks he's too good for a menu. $10, says he's Gideon Pierce." Eliza frowned as she poured the coffee. "Who?" "Gideon Pierce. Pierce Holdings International. They own half the downtown skyline. My dad used to be a foreman on one of their sites before he got laid off. That guy's picture is in the business section every other week. They say he's ruthless. Turned his family's millions into billions before he was 40. Eliza glanced over at the man. He was staring out the window, his profile sharp and severe against the neon-lit street. He looked less like a businessman and more like a predator resting between hunts. She picked up the cup and saucer. "Well, to me, he's just another customer who wants black coffee." She walked back to the booth and set the coffee down. "Here you are, sir," as he reached for the cup. His hand emerged from his cufflink-adorned sleeve, and on his right ring finger, nestled against his skin, was a ring that made Eliza's breath catch in her throat. It wasn't the size or the gleam of it that stopped her. It was the design, an intricate, masculine signet ring made of a pale, buttery gold. Etched into the flat face was a sigil, a stylized phoenix. Its wings spread wide, with a single tiny sapphire set in its eye, sparkling like a captured star. The band itself was unique, carved to look like intertwined feathers. Eliza's mind reeled. She saw the same ring not gleaming under diner light, but resting in a small velvet-lined box on her mother's bedside table. Laura's ring was identical in every detail, down to the tiny, impossibly blue sapphire eye. It was her most cherished possession, the one thing she'd refused to sell, even when the medical bills became a tidal wave threatening to drown them. "My father," she'd always said, "gave it to me." Her voice thin and reedy. "It's a promise, Eliza. A promise of what's right." The words tumbled out of Eliza's mouth before she could stop them. A quiet, stunned whisper. "Sir, my mother has a ring just like yours." Gideon Pierce froze, his hand hovering over the coffee cups. He slowly retracted it, and his piercing blue eyes lifted to meet hers. The casual dismissal was gone, replaced by a sudden glacial intensity. He didn't speak. He simply stared, his gaze so sharp and analytical it felt like he was dissecting her, searching for the punchline to a joke she wasn't telling. "Excuse me?" he finally said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming dangerously soft. Eliza's heart hammered against her ribs. She felt Chloe's worried stare from across the room. She should have just walked away, kept her mouth shut, but the image of her mother's frail hand clutching that identical ring was burned into her mind. "The ring," she stammered, pointing a trembling finger. "On your hand. It sits the same as my mother's, the phoenix, the little sapphire, everything." A flicker of something unreadable crossed his face, not surprise, not recognition, but something harder, darker. He slowly turned his hand over, examining the ring as if seeing it for the first time. "That's impossible," he stated. "It wasn't a guess. It was a verdict." "But it's not," Eliza insisted, her voice gaining a desperate edge. "She's had it my whole life. Her father gave it to her. It's one of a kind," he told her. Gideon Pierce placed his hand flat on the table, the ring a silent golden accusation. His gaze was cold steel. "This ring," he said, enunciating each word with chilling precision, "has been in the Pierce family for over 100 years. It was custom-made for my great-grandfather, Alaric Pierce. There is no other. There has never been another. You are mistaken. The finality in his tone felt like a slap. He was calling her a liar, or worse, a fool. The injustice of it, piled on top of her exhaustion and fear for her mother, ignited a spark of defiance in her. "I'm not mistaken," she said, her voice low but firm. "I've held it in my hands 1,000 times. I know every detail on it. I could draw it from memory." He leaned back, a faint condescending smile touching his lips. It didn't reach his eyes. "A fascinating story. What is your name?" "Eliza. Eliza Holay." "Well, Miss Holay," he said, picking up his coffee cup and taking a slow, deliberate sip, "your mother is either a liar or a thief, because the only way she has a ring like this is if it's the one that was stolen from my family 50 years ago." He set the cup down with a soft click. The sound echoed in the sudden silence of Eliza's world. Stolen. The word hung in the air. Thick, poisonous. Her mother, the gentlest, most honest person she knew, a thief. The accusation was so absurd, so vile. It was like being told the sun rose in the west. Gideon Pierce reached into his suit jacket, pulled out a slim leather wallet, and extracted a small photograph, placing it on the table between them. "Do you recognize this woman?" he asked, his voice suddenly strained. The photograph showed a young woman with Eliza's eyes and smile, standing beside a younger version of the man sitting across from her now. On her finger gleamed the phoenix ring. "This is why I'm here tonight," he said quietly. "I've been searching for her for Laura for 25 years. Eliza's world tilted on its axis. You know my mother's name? I should. She was my wife." Eliza stared at the photograph, her fingers trembling as they hovered above the glossy surface. The woman's smile, her mother's smile, was radiant, unburdened by illness or worry. And the man beside her, a younger Gideon Pierce, looked nothing like the cold, calculating billionaire sitting across from her now. His eyes held warmth, his smile genuine. His arm was wrapped protectively around Laura's waist. "No," Eliza whispered, shaking her head. "That's impossible. My father was James Holay. He was a mechanic. He died when I was 10. Gideon's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "James was a good man, I'm sure. But he wasn't your biological father, Eliza." The diner seemed to recede around her, the familiar sounds fading to a distant hum. Eliza gripped the edge of the table to steady herself. "You're lying," she said, but there was no conviction in her voice, just confusion, fear. "My mother would have told me, would she?" Gideon asked, his voice surprisingly gentle. "The woman who kept this ring all these years but never explained its true significance?" He tapped the phoenix ring. "Laura had her reasons, I'm sure, but I've been searching for both of you since the day you disappeared." Chloe appeared at Eliza's side, her expression concerned. "Everything okay here, Liz?" Eliza couldn't find her voice. Gideon looked up at Chloe, his authoritative presence returning instantly. "We're fine, thank you," he said dismissively. Then, noticing Eliza's distress, he added, "Actually, could you bring us some water? And perhaps your manager?" Chloe hesitated, looking to Eliza for guidance. "I'm okay," Eliza managed to say. "Just give us a minute, Chloe." When they were alone again, Eliza forced herself to look at the photo more carefully. The time stamp in the corner read June 1999. She was born in February 2000. The math added up as much as she wished it did. "If what you're saying is true," Eliza said slowly, "where have you been for 24 years, and why come looking now?" Gideon's hands closed around his coffee cup, his knuckles whitening. "I never stopped looking. Your mother took you and disappeared when you were just an infant. Changed your names, erased every trace. For years I had private investigators searching, but Laura was surprisingly resourceful. Why would she run from you?" Eliza asked, the question sharp with accusation. Gideon's gaze drifted to the window, to the darkness beyond. "It's complicated." "Uncomplicated," Eliza demanded. A faint smile touched his lips, not condescending this time, but sad, almost proud. "You have her fire." Then his expression sobered. "Laura and I were happy at first, but my family dot. They didn't approve of her. Laura came from nothing, worked as a waitress when we met. The Pierces have always been obsessed with lineage, with keeping the bloodline pure, whatever that means." His voice dripped with contempt. "My father threatened to disinherit me if I didn't leave her. I refused. Then Laura became pregnant with you, and things escalated. My father, single quotes." Gideon paused, visibly struggling with the memory. "He sent men to convince Laura to terminate the pregnancy, to disappear from my life." Eliza felt sick. What did they do to her? They never got the chance. "I intercepted them, but the damage was done." Laura was terrified. She didn't feel safe anymore, not even with me. His voice dropped to a whisper. "She left that night, left everything but that ring. I came home to an empty apartment and a note that said, 'I'll protect our child from your world.' And you just let her go?" Eliza couldn't keep the accusation from her voice. "No," Gideon said sharply. "I searched everywhere. But Laura was smart. She covered her tracks. By the time I found her trail, it was cold. Years had passed." He looked up at Eliza, his eyes haunted. "My father died last month. Among his personal effects, I found a file surveillance photos of Laura from 5 years ago. He'd known where she was all along, kept the information from me. Why would he do that?" "To protect the family legacy," Gideon said bitterly. "He was afraid I'd choose you and Laura over the Pierce empire. And he was right. I would have in a heartbeat." The manager appeared, a concerned look on his face. "Miss Hole, is everything all right?" Eliza looked up, suddenly aware of how this must appear, her distress, the intense conversation with a powerful man. "I need to go," she said abruptly, standing up. "My shift is over." Gideon rose as well, alarmed. "Eliza, please. I've only just found you." She turned to her manager. "Frank, I need to leave early. Family emergency." Frank looked between them, confused but trusting his longtime employee. Of course, Eliza, go ahead. Gideon reached for her arm but stopped himself, respecting her space. At least let me drive you, please. We can talk more on the way. On the way where? Eliza challenged. To see your mother, he replied quietly. That's why you're leaving, isn't it? Let's tell her about me. About this. He gestured to the photograph still on the table. Eliza hesitated. The thought of getting into a car with this stranger who claimed to be her father made her uneasy, and yet something in her gut told her he was telling the truth. Fine, she said finally, but I drive my own car. You can follow me. 20 minutes later, Eliza led Gideon through the sterile corridors of St. Mary's Hospital. Her mind raced, rehearsing how to tell her mother that the man she had fled from, the man whose existence she had kept secret for 24 years, had found them. Outside Laura's room, Eliza paused, holding up a hand to stop Gideon. Wait here, she instructed. Let me talk to her first. Gideon nodded, understanding in his eyes. He stood perfectly still, watching as Eliza slipped into the room. Laura was awake, propped up against her pillows, a dog-eared poetry book open in her lap. Despite the advanced cancer that had ravaged her body, her eyes were alert, her mind sharp as ever. Those eyes widened when she saw Eliza's expression. Honey, what's wrong? Eliza sat gently on the edge of the bed, taking her mother's fragile hand. Mom, I need to ask you something, and I need the truth. She swallowed hard. Who is Gideon Pierce? The book slid from Laura's lap as her face drained of color. For a moment, she looked like she might faint. How? She whispered, her voice barely audible. How do you know that name? He came to the diner tonight, Eliza said, watching her mother's reaction carefully. He has a ring just like yours. He says ... He says he's my father. Laura's free hand instinctively went to her throat, fingers closing around nothing. The ring box was still on her nightstand, closed. He showed me a picture of you two together, Eliza's voice breaking. Mom, why did you never tell me? A single tear tracked down Laura's hollow cheek. To protect you, she whispered. His family ... They were monsters, Eliza. His father threatened to take you away from me, to erase me from your life entirely. Said no Pierce heir would be raised by a waitress, but Gideon says he searched for us, that he never wanted you to leave. Laura's eyes flashed with a mixture of pain and anger. Of course he would say that now. But where was he when his father's men cornered me in our apartment? Where was he when they showed me pictures of what happens to women who get in the way of Pierce ambitions? Eliza felt cold. He said he intercepted them. Too late, Laura said bitterly. The threat was made. The fear was planted. She squeezed Eliza's hand. Is he here? Now? Eliza nodded. In the hallway, Laura closed her eyes, took a deep breath. When she opened them again, there was a steely resolve Eliza recognized, the same determination that had carried them through years of hardship. I want to see him, Laura declared. After all this time, I want to look him in the eye when he explains himself. Are you sure? Laura nodded, adjusting herself in the bed, straightening her thin hospital gown with dignity. I've been running for 24 years. I'm done running. Eliza stood and walked to the door. With one last glance at her mother, she opened it and motioned for Gideon to enter. He stepped into the room slowly, his confident stride faltering as he laid eyes on Laura for the first time in nearly a quarter century. His composed expression crumbled, revealing raw, undisguised emotion. Laura, he breathed, her name like a prayer on his lips. Laura stared back, her face unreadable. Hello, Gideon, she said softly. You found us at last. The hospital room fell silent save for the steady beep of Laura's heart monitor. Gideon stood frozen by the doorway, his eyes fixed on Laura's frail form. The Laura he remembered had been vibrant, fierce, her body strong from years of waiting tables. This Laura was a shadow, her once thick chestnut hair now thin and streaked with gray, her cheeks hollow, her skin nearly translucent, but her eyes, those were unchanged, dark, intelligent, and utterly uncompromising. You look different, Laura finally said, breaking the silence. A sad smile touched Gideon's lips. So do you. Eliza felt the tension crackle between them. Decades of unspoken words, accusations and explanations suspended in the sterile air. May I? Gideon gestured to the chair beside Laura's bed. Laura gave a single, tight nod. As he moved closer, her hand instinctively reached for the velvet box on her nightstand. Eliza noticed how her mother's fingers curled protectively around it. I never thought I'd see you again, Laura said, her voice steadier than Eliza had expected. I never gave up looking, Gideon replied. Not for a single day. Laura's laugh was bitter, barely more than an exhale, and yet it took you 24 years to find us. Some determination. Mom, Eliza began, but Laura silenced her with a look. No, Eliza, I've earned the right to my anger. She turned back to Gideon. You let me believe I was alone, that we were alone. Gideon leaned forward, his hands clasped tightly together. I searched everywhere. I hired the best investigators money could buy. I followed every lead, no matter how tenuous. His voice dropped. I went to your parents' funeral hoping you'd be there. Laura flinched at that, and Eliza felt a pang of sympathy for both of them, her mother, who had missed her own parents' funeral out of fear, and this man, who had stood vigil at a graveside hoping for a glimpse of his lost family. Your father made it very clear what would happen if I stayed, Laura said. My father is dead, Gideon replied, a finality in his tone, and I was never him. You knew that, did I? Laura challenged. You were his son, his heir. I saw how you changed when you took over more responsibilities at Pierce Holding, how the board meetings and merger deals hardened you. Her voice grew stronger with each word. I saw the man you were becoming, Gideon, and I couldn't let our daughter grow up in that world. Gideon's face tightened with pain. So you made the decision for all of us. You took my child and disappeared. I protected her, Laura insisted. From me? The question hung in the air, raw and aching. Eliza couldn't stand it anymore. Stop it, both of you, she said, her voice cutting through their tension. This isn't helping anyone. Both turned to look at her, momentarily surprised, as if they'd forgotten she was there. Eliza's right, Laura conceded after a moment. This isn't about us anymore. It's about her. Single quotes. Gideon nodded slowly. That's all it's ever been about for me. He turned to Eliza. I have no intention of disrupting your life. I just wanted to know you. How did you find us? Laura asked, the practical question seeming to ground her. Gideon's expression darkened. As I told Eliza, when my father died, I discovered a file among his things, Phelan's photos of you from 5 years ago. He'd known where you were and kept it from me. Laura paled even further, if that was possible. He was still watching us? After all this time? Yes. And there's something else. Gideon hesitated. The file contained medical records. Your diagnosis, Laura. He knew you were sick before I did. A terrible silence fell over the room. Laura's hands trembled against the hospital sheets. How dare he? She whispered, her voice thick with rage and grief. How dare he know that while I fought alone, Eliza felt sick? The revelation that her grandfather, a man she'd never met, had known of her mother's illness and done nothing was almost too much to process. She reached for her mother's hand, squeezing it gently. Your father was a monster, Laura said to Gideon, but you weren't. That's why I kept the ring, to remind myself that once there was good in the Pierce name. Gideon's eyes widened slightly. Moving slowly, deliberately, he reached into his pocket and removed a small velvet pouch. From it, he withdrew a folded piece of paper, yellowed with age. I kept something too, he said quietly. He unfolded the paper carefully and held it out to Laura. Eliza leaned closer to see. It was a note, written in her mother's handwriting. Asterisk, I'll protect our child from your world. Asterisk, the only words you left me with, Gideon said. I've read them every day for 24 years, trying to understand what I could have done differently. Laura stared at the note, her eyes filling with tears. You could have chosen us over your legacy, she whispered. You could have walked away from it all. I would have, Gideon replied, his voice breaking, if you'd given me the chance. Eliza watched them, these two strangers who had created her, whose decisions had shaped her entire existence without her knowledge or consent. She felt a surge of anger, then a profound sadness. I think, she said carefully, that you both thought you were doing what was best, but neither of you considered what it would mean for me to grow up without knowing the truth. Single quotes. Both Gideon and Laura looked at her with identical expressions of remorse. You're right, Laura admitted. I thought I was protecting you, but maybe I was also protecting myself from having to face the past. Gideon nodded, his shoulders slumping slightly. And I was so focused on finding you that I never considered what would happen when I did. A nurse appeared in the doorway, clipboard in hand. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I need to check Mrs. Holt's vitals. Of course. Gideon stood immediately, stepping back to give the nurses space. The nurse moved efficiently around Laura, checking the monitors, adjusting her for. Your next round of medication is due in about 20 minutes, she informed Laura. You should probably get some rest soon. When she left, Laura looked exhausted, the emotional confrontation having drained what little energy she had. You should go, she told Gideon. This is ... a lot to process. He nodded, understanding in his eyes. May I come back tomorrow? Laura looked to Eliza, deferring the decision to her daughter. Yes, Eliza said after a moment. But not until the afternoon. Mom needs her rest in the mornings, of course. Gideon moved toward the door, then paused, turning back. Laura, is there anything you need? Anything I can do? A flash of the old fire appeared in Laura's eyes. We've managed this long without your help, Gideon. He accepted the rebuke with a slight nod. Nonetheless, the offer stands. He looked at Eliza. For both of you. After he left, Eliza sat beside her mother in silence, both women lost in thought. He seemed sincere, Eliza finally said. Laura sighed, her fingers still clutching the ring box. He always did. It's what made him dangerous. Dangerous how? Laura's gaze drifted to the window, to the night beyond. He made you believe in possibilities, in happy ending. And in his world, Eliza, those don't exist. She looked back at her daughter. I need you to be careful. The Pierces take what they want, and they destroy anyone who stands in their way. He's not like that, Eliza said, surprised by her own defense of a man she barely knew. Maybe not, but his world is. And now that he's found you, that world will come for you too. Laura's voice was heavy with warning. There's something I haven't told you about this ring. Something that goes deeper than just a memento of your father. Eliza frowned. What do you mean? Laura opened the velvet box, revealing the phoenix ring nestled inside. The sapphire eyes seemed to glow in the dim hospital light. Watching, judging. This ring isn't just a piece of jewelry, Laura said softly. It's proof. Proof of something the Pierce family would do anything to keep buried. Proof of what, Mom? Laura's fingers traced the phoenix sigil. Of the greatest betrayal in the family's history. A betrayal that, if revealed, could bring down the entire Pierce empire. She looked up at Eliza, her eyes intense. And now that Gideon has found us, we need to decide whether to use it. Eliza stared at the ring, seeing it with new eyes. Not as a sentimental keepsake, but as a weapon. A key, a dangerous secret made physical. Tell me everything, she said, settling in for the truth that had been hidden from her all her life. Laura closed her eyes, gathering her strength. When she opened them again, there was a steely resolve that reminded Eliza of the woman her mother had been before the illness determined. Unbreakable. The Phoenix ring was never meant to be Gideon's, Laura began, her voice barely above a whisper. It belonged to his great-uncle, Daniel Pierce. I've never heard of him, Eliza said, frowning. Few have. The Pierce family erased him from their history. Laura carefully removed the ring from its velvet nest, holding it up so the sapphire eye caught the light. Daniel was Alaric Pierce's older brother. By birthright, he should have inherited everything. Eliza leaned forward. What happened to him? According to the official Pierce family history, Daniel never existed. But the truth is, he was the true heir, the firstborn son. Laura's fingers traced the phoenix's spread wings. Alaric, the younger brother, was jealous and ambitious. He wanted the empire for himself, so he, killed his brother? Laura shook her head. Worse, in some ways. He destroyed him, discredited him, had him committed to an asylum on false pretenses. Back then, it was easy enough if you had money and influence. Alaric forged documents, bribed doctors, and made his brother disappear into the system. Eliza felt a chill run through her. That's horrible. It was, Laura agreed. But Daniel was resilient. After years in that place, he managed to escape. By then, Alaric had taken control of the family business, rewritten the company history, and erased all traces of his brother. But the ring, Alaric had commissioned 2 identical rings from a Parisian jeweler, Laura explained. One for himself, symbolizing the builder of the empire. One for Daniel, symbolizing its soul, its moral compass. When Daniel escaped, he took his ring, the only proof of his true identity. The story was fantastical, almost unbelievable. Yet as Laura spoke, pieces began falling into place for Eliza. The intensity of Gideon's reaction at the diner, the way he'd examined the ring as if seeing a ghost. How did you learn all this? Eliza asked. Laura's expression softened. From your grandfather, Owen Calloway. He wasn't just an engineer, Eliza. He was Daniel's closest friend and confidant. The revelation hit Eliza like a physical blow. Grandpa Owen knew Daniel Pierce? Laura nodded. They met in the 1960s, when your grandfather was developing a revolutionary turbine system. Daniel, living under an assumed name, recognized Owen's genius and introduced him to potential investors, keeping him away from Pierce Industries, which by then was run by Gideon's father, William. But the Pierce family found out anyway, Eliza guessed. Yes, William Pierce, Alaric's son, discovered the connection. He realized that Owen's association with Daniel could resurrect the old scandal, so he did what Pierces do, he eliminated the threat. Laura's voice hardened. He stole Owen's invention, forced him to sign away his rights, and threatened our family if Owen ever spoke about Daniel or the turbine again. And the ring? Before Daniel died, he gave the ring to your grandfather. He said it was proof that he was the rightful heir, proof of Alaric's treachery, proof that the entire Pierce fortune was built on a foundation of betrayal and theft. Laura's fingers closed around the ring. Owen gave it to me for safekeeping just before he died. He made me promise to protect it, to wait for the right moment. Eliza sat back, her mind reeling. Does Gideon know any of this? I don't think so, Laura said. William Pierce maintained his father's lies. I doubt he told Gideon the truth about the family's origins. She looked directly at Eliza. That's why I kept us hidden all these years. It wasn't just about protecting you from the Pierce influence. It was about protecting this secret until you were old enough to understand what it means. What exactly does it mean, Mom? Laura reached for her daughter's hand, pressing the ring into her palm. It means that legally, the Pierce fortune should have passed through Daniel's line, not Alaric's. It means that every dollar, every building, every asset owned by Pierce Holdings is built on a theft more than a century old. She closed Eliza's fingers around the ring, and it means that now, you have a choice to make. The weight of the ring felt heavier than its physical presence should allow. Eliza stared at her closed fist, understanding dawning. You want me to use this against Gideon, she said slowly. To expose the truth. Laura shook her head. I want you to decide, Eliza. For 24 years, I've carried this burden alone. Now that Gideon has found us, now that I'm ... single quotes, she trailed off, unwilling to voice her deteriorating condition. The decision has to be yours. Eliza opened her palm, staring at the phoenix. Its sapphire eyes seemed to stare back, challenging her. What if Gideon truly didn't know? What if he's innocent in all this? Perhaps he is, Laura conceded. But the wealth he enjoys, the power he wields, it was all stolen. And not just from some distant ancestor, but from your own grandfather. Owen lost everything because of the Pierces. We've struggled our entire lives while they've lived in luxury. The unfairness of it all hit Eliza with sudden force. All those double shifts at the diner, the nights spent worrying about bills, the scholarships she'd lost because she had to work instead of maintaining her grades, all while her biological father lived in penthouses and flew private jets. I need time to think, Eliza said finally. This is ... A lot. Laura nodded, fatigue evident in every line of her face. Of course. But remember, now that Gideon has found us, we're on borrowed time. If he discovers what that ring truly represents ... Single quotes, the implication hung in the air. Eliza carefully placed the ring back in its velvet box and snapped it shut. Get some rest, Mom. she said, leaning down to kiss Laura's forehead. I'll be back in the morning. Outside the hospital, the night air was cool against Eliza's flushed skin. Her head spun with revelations, with possibilities and dangers she'd never imagined existed. She pulled out her phone, staring at the business card Gideon had pressed into her hand before leaving. His private number was embossed in sleek silver lettering. Should she call him? Confront him with what she'd learned? Or wait, gather more information, confirm her mother's story? As she debated, her phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Asterisk, I hope today wasn't too overwhelming. I've waited so long to find you, Eliza. There's so much more I want to tell you. Gideon asterisk, another message followed immediately. Asterisk, I've taken the liberty of paying your mother's outstanding medical bills. It's the least I can do. Please don't see it as an intrusion, just a father trying to help his family. Asterisk, Eliza nearly dropped her phone. Her mother's medical bills. Hundreds of thousands of dollars of specialized treatments, experimental therapies, private rooms all paid. Just like that, a third message appeared. Asterisk, I've also set up a trust. You'll never have to work another day in your life unless you choose to. We have so much time to make up for DOT. Asterisk, emotions warred within her: gratitude, suspicion, relief, anger. Was this generosity genuine or a calculated move to buy her loyalty? Was Gideon trying to help his newfound daughter? Or was he somehow aware of the explosive secret she now possessed? The phoenix ring in her purse seemed to burn through the fabric, a talisman of truth and destruction. With it, she could potentially bring down an empire. Without proof, she was just a waitress making wild accusations against one of the world's most powerful men. As Eliza walked to her car, she made a decision. She would accept Gideon's help for her mother. Laura deserved the best care money could buy for whatever time she had left, but she wouldn't commit to anything else, not until she knew more. Not until she was certain whether Gideon Pierce was victim or villain in this twisted family saga. Not until she decided whether the phoenix should rise from the ashes or remain buried in secrets for another generation. The following morning, Eliza woke to sunlight streaming through her apartment windows. For a blissful moment, everything was normal. She was just a waitress with a shift at noon, a mother in the hospital, and bills to pay. Then reality crashed back. Her newly discovered father, the phoenix ring, the century-old betrayal, and the text messages promising financial freedom. She checked her phone. 3 missed calls from Chloe, concerned about her abrupt departure last night. 1 text from Frank asking if she'd be at work today. And another message from Gideon. Asterisk, I've arranged for Dr. Catherine Morrison to consult on your mother's case. She's the leading oncologist on the East Coast. She'll be at the hospital at 10 a.m. I hope that's accepted. Asterisk, Eliza stared at the message, conflicted. On one hand, her mother deserved the best care possible. On the other, accepting Gideon's help felt like tacit approval of everything the Pierce's family represented, wealth built on stolen ideas and erased identities. She texted Frank that she needed a few more days off, a family situation, and forced herself out of bed. The velvet ring box sat on her nightstand, seemingly innocent yet heavy with implication. She picked it up, opened it, and studied the phoenix again. The craftsmanship was exquisite, the design both beautiful and haunting. How many lives had been destroyed because of what it represented? At the hospital, Eliza found her mother looking surprisingly alert. A tall, elegant woman in a tailored suit was reviewing Laura's chart, while 2 nurses adjusted equipment. Eliza, Laura called, her voice stronger than it had been in weeks. This is Dr. Morrison. The woman turned, offering a professional smile and firm handshake. You must be Eliza. Your mother's been telling me about you, Doctor. Morrison is optimistic about a new treatment protocol, Laura explained, a spark of hope in her eyes that Eliza hadn't seen in months. The doctor nodded. Your mother's case is challenging, but not hopeless. I've reviewed her files and believe she's an excellent candidate for an immunotherapy trial we're conducting. The results have been promising in similar cases. And the cost? Eliza asked automatically. All covered, doctor, Morrison replied smoothly. Mr. Pierce has arranged everything. Eliza caught her mother's gaze. A silent understanding passed between them. Accept the help for now. Decide about the ring later. After Dr. Morrison left, Laura reached for Eliza's hand. Did you call him? No, Eliza. He texted. He's paid all your medical bills and set up a trust fund for me. Laura's lips thin. Classic Pierce strategy. Use money to create obligation. Or maybe he's just trying to help, Eliza countered, surprised to find herself defending Gideon. Mom, what if he's not like his father or grandfather? What if he genuinely didn't know about Daniel or Grandpa Owen? It doesn't change the fact that his wealth comes from a theft, Laura said. But her voice lacked conviction. Though I suppose none of us choose our ancestors, I need to know more, Eliza decided. About Gideon. About the Pierce family history. Before I make any decisions about the ring, Laura nodded slowly. Be careful. The more questions you ask, the more attention you'll attract. There may be others in the Pierce orbit who've protected the secret for generations. A nurse entered with medication, ending their conversation. Eliza kissed her mother's forehead and promised to return that evening. Outside the hospital, Eliza pulled out her phone and after a moment's hesitation, called the number on Gideon's card. He answered on the first ring. Eliza. His voice was carefully neutral, but she detected an undercurrent of hope. Can we meet? She asked without preamble. I have questions. Of course. Name the place and time, Eliza considered. She needed neutral territory, somewhere public but private enough for a sensitive conversation. There's a park near the hospital, she suggested. It has a cafe by the duck pond. I know it, Gideon replied. 1 hour. 1 hour, she confirmed and hung up. The cafe was nearly empty when Eliza arrived. She chose a table overlooking the pond, ordered a coffee, and waited. Precisely on time, a sleek black car pulled up at the park entrance. Gideon emerged, looking less imposing in dark jeans and a simple button-down shirt. Still wealthy, still powerful, but intentionally understated. He spotted her immediately and walked over, his stride purposeful yet cautious, as if approaching a wild animal that might bolt at any moment. "Thank you for agreeing to meet," he said, taking the seat across from her. "Thank you for helping my mother," Eliza replied, watching him carefully. "The doctor you sent seems very competent. Catherine is the best in her field. If anyone can help Laura, she can." He paused, studying Eliza's face. "Tired. Have you slept?" "Not much," she admitted. "It's been an, eventful 24 hours. Gideon nodded, understanding in his eyes. "What can I tell you, Eliza?" "Ask me anything." She took a deep breath. "Tell me about your family. The real history, not the sanitized version." If the request surprised him, he didn't show it. "What specifically do you want to know?" "Tell me about Daniel Pierce." The color drained from Gideon's face. For a moment, he looked genuinely shocked. Then his expression shuddered, becoming carefully blank. "Where did you hear that name?" he asked, his voice controlled. "That's not an answer," Eliza countered. Gideon was silent for a long moment, his fingers drumming lightly on the table. Finally, he spoke, his voice low. "Daniel Pierce was my great-grandfather Alaric's brother. He's rarely mentioned in family histories because of ... disagreements over the company's direction in its early days." "Disagreements?" Eliza repeated flatly. "Is that what you call having someone committed to an asylum and erased from history?" Gideon's eyes widened fractionally. "You know more than I expected," he said carefully. "May I ask how?" Eliza ignored the question. "What about Owen Calloway? Does that name mean anything to you?" This time, Gideon didn't bother hiding his surprise. Should it? His reaction seemed genuine, which only confused Eliza more. Either Gideon was an exceptional actor, or he truly didn't know the full story. "My grandfather," she said simply. "The man who gave my mother the Phoenix ring." Understanding dawned in Gideon's eyes. "The ring," he murmured. "Of course." He leaned forward, intensity radiating from it. "Eliza, I need to know everything. Whatever Laura has told you about my family, about Daniel, about this Owen Calloway, I need to hear it all. Why should I tell you anything?" Eliza challenged. "The Pierce family destroyed my grandfather's life, stole his invention, threatened his family. Why would I give you information that could hurt my mother further?" "Because I think we've both been kept in the dark," Gideon replied earnestly. "My father never spoke of Daniel except as a cautionary tale, the family traitor. But I've had suspicions for years that the official history wasn't accurate." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture that made him look suddenly vulnerable. "When my father died, I found fragments, a letter here, photograph there suggesting something more complicated." "Like what?" "Like the fact that Daniel may not have been the villain of the story," Gideon said quietly, "and that my grandfather William may have gone to extreme lengths to suppress something about him." Eliza studied him, trying to determine if his ignorance was feigned. "If what you're saying is true, then you've built your entire fortune on a lie. If what I'm beginning to suspect is true, then yes," Gideon acknowledged, his voice steady despite the admission. "And I need to know, no matter what it costs." The conviction in his voice gave Eliza pause. She had expected denial, perhaps anger, but not this calm determination to uncover the truth regardless of personal consequences. "Why?" she asked. "Why risk everything you have for a truth that could destroy you?" Gideon's gaze was unwavering. "Because I've spent my entire adult life trying to be better than my father, better than the Pierce legacy. I've built schools, funded hospitals, created foundations that actually help people instead of just laundering our reputation." His voice grew passionate. "If my wealth, my position, everything I've worked for is built on someone else's suffering, then none of it means anything. I need to know, Eliza. I need to make it right." A jogger passed their table, momentarily breaking the intensity of the moment. Eliza took a sip of her now cold coffee, buying time to think. "The ring," she said finally. "It originally belonged to Daniel Pierce, not Alaric. It's proof of his existence, his rightful place in the family." Gideon's breath caught. "May I see it?" Eliza hesitated, then reached into her bag and withdrew the velvet box. She opened it, revealing the phoenix with its sapphire eye, but didn't hand it over. "There's an inscription inside," she said. "A name." Gideon's eyes widened. "Owen," he whispered. "How do you know that name?" Eliza demanded, closing the ring box protectively. Gideon's expression was one of genuine bewilderment. "I found a journal in my father's personal safe after he died. Most pages were torn out, but on one remaining page there was a strange entry. Daniel's ring is the key. Owen knows. I assumed Owen was someone from that era, a business associate perhaps. I never imagined ... single quotes," he trailed off, his gaze fixed on the closed ring box. "You really don't know," Eliza said, realization dawning. This wasn't the reaction of a man protecting a family secret. It was the shock of someone seeing pieces of a puzzle finally connect. "Tell me everything," Gideon said quietly. "Please." Eliza hesitated, weighing her options. Her mother's warnings echoed in her mind, but across from her sat a man who seemed as much a victim of the Pierce family lies as her own grandfather had been. "Owen Calloway was my grandfather," she began carefully, "an engineer who developed a revolutionary turbine system in the 1960s. Your father stole it from him, threatened my grandparents, and forced them to disappear. Gideon's face paled. The Callaway turbine, he whispered. It's the cornerstone of Pierce Holdings' energy division. My father always claimed he bought the patent legally from a struggling inventor who couldn't develop it properly. He shook his head in disgust. Another lie. There's more, Eliza continued. Owen was friends with Daniel Pierce, who was living under an assumed name by then. Daniel gave him the ring before he died, a ring that should have been passed to Daniel's descendants, not Alaric's, if that's true. Gideon said slowly. Then the entire Pierce fortune should have gone through Daniel's line. Yes. And Alaric essentially stole his brother's birthright. Yes. Gideon sat back, running a hand over his face. My God, he murmured. Everything I've built my life on ... is built on theft and lies, Eliza finished for him. For a long moment, neither spoke. A family with young children passed their table, the kids' laughter creating a jarring contrast to the weight of their conversation. Finally, Gideon straightened his shoulders. I need proof, he said decisively. Not that I don't believe you, but if I'm going to make this right, I need irrefutable evidence. The ring is a starting point, but not enough by itself, Gideon interrupted. I need documentation, testimony, something that would stand up in court. Single quotes, his eyes lit with sudden determination. There's a private archive at the Pierce's family estate, records going back to the company's founding. If there's evidence of Daniel's existence, of his rightful place in the family, it would be there. And you think your family would just leave evidence of their crimes lying around? Eliza asked skeptically. Not intentionally, Gideon admitted, but my great-grandfather Alaric was meticulous. He documented everything. And my grandfather William was too arrogant to destroy records. He just sealed them away, certain no one would ever look. And how exactly do you plan to access these archives? I'm the head of the family now, Gideon said simply. I have keys to rooms that haven't been opened in decades. Eliza studied him, trying to discern his true intention. Was he genuinely interested in uncovering the truth, or was this an elaborate ploy to identify and neutralize the threat she and her mother posed? If what you're saying is true, she said slowly, exposing it could cost you everything. Yes, Gideon acknowledged without hesitation. But it would be the right thing to do. Why should I trust you? Gideon's gaze was steady. Because I'm not my father, Eliza, or my grandfather. I've spent my life trying to atone for the Pierce name without ever knowing exactly what I was atoning for. He leaned forward. Help me uncover the truth. Whatever it costs me personally, I'll accept it. Something in his voice, a quiet sincerity, an undertone of long-carried guilt made Eliza believe him, or at least believe that he believed what he was saying. I can't leave my mother, she said. I understand. But the archives are at the Pierce estate in the Berkshires. It would take days to go through Eliza thought. My mother is stable for now. With Dr. Morrison overseeing her care ... she made a decision. 3 days. I can give you 3 days to find whatever evidence exists, but I go with you. I see everything you see. Relief washed over Gideon's features. Of course. When can you leave? Tomorrow morning, Eliza decided. I need tonight with my mother. I'll arrange everything, Gideon said, already reaching for his phone. We'll take the company helicopter. It's faster than driving. Single quotes, Eliza couldn't help but laugh. A short, surprised sound. Just like that? Helicopter to a family estate to dig through secret archives? This isn't my normal Tuesday. Gideon's expression softened. None of this is normal, Eliza. For either of us. He paused, his fingers hovering over his phone. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. For all of it. For not finding you sooner. For what my family did to yours. You didn't know, Eliza said, surprising herself with the admission. That doesn't excuse it. His remorse seemed genuine, and Eliza felt a grudging respect for this man who was willing to question his entire legacy based on fragments of evidence and the word of strangers. One more thing, she said, remembering her mother's warning. Does anyone else in the family know you found me? About the ring? Gideon shook his head. No one. After discovering that file and my father's things, I pursued the search alone. I didn't trust ... single quotes, he trailed off, looking troubled. You didn't trust who? My cousin Robert, Gideon said reluctantly. He runs the family's charitable foundation, but he's always resented that the company leadership passed to me instead of him. If there's anyone who might know about the family's secrets, who might have been complicit in my father's deceptions, it would be Robert. Then we need to be careful, Eliza said. If what my mother told me is true, the Pierce family has gone to extreme lengths to protect these secrets. I'll make arrangements that won't attract attention, Gideon promised. As far as anyone will know, I'm taking a few personal days at the estate. It happens often enough that it won't raise suspicions. They agreed to meet the following morning at a small private airfield outside the city. As Eliza turned to leave, Gideon called after her. Eliza, thank you for giving me a chance to make this right. She nodded, not trusting herself to speak. The emotions of the past 24 hours were finally catching up to her. Exhaustion, confusion, a strange tentative hope. That evening, when Eliza told her mother about the planned trip to the Pierce estate, Laura was predictably alarmed. It could be a trap, she warned. Once you're there, isolated, what's to stop him from taking the ring? From silencing you like they silenced your grandfather? He's not like that, Eliza insisted. I believe he genuinely doesn't know the full story. Or he's an exceptional actor, Laura countered. Mom, if I don't go, we'll never know for sure. The ring alone isn't enough proof. We need documentation, evidence of what happened to Daniel, to Grandpa Owen. Laura sighed, reaching for Eliza's hand. You're right. We need more than just my word against the Pierce Empire. She squeezed her daughter's fingers. Just promise me you'll be careful. Trust your instincts. If anything feels wrong, you get out immediately. I promise, Eliza assured her. And keep the ring with you at all times, Laura added. Never let it out of your possession. As Eliza left the hospital that night, she felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. She wasn't just seeking truth for herself anymore, or even for her mother. She was potentially pursuing justice for her grandfather, for Daniel Pierce, and for all those the Pierce family had wronged over the decades. The photograph Gideon had shown her at the diner seemed like it belonged to another lifetime, a frozen moment of happiness before secrets and lies tore two families apart. Now, perhaps, they had a chance to mend what had been broken. The private helicopter cut through clear morning skies, carrying Eliza far from the only life she'd ever known. Below, the city's concrete grid gave way to suburbs, then to rolling countryside, and finally to the dense forests of the Berkshires. Eliza pressed her forehead against the cool window, watching the landscape transform beneath them. Across from her, Gideon worked on a tablet, occasionally glancing up to check on her. He'd been respectful of her silence since they'd taken off, seeming to understand her need to process the surreal situation. We're almost there, he said, finally, nodding toward the windshield. Eliza leaned forward to see what had appeared on the horizon, a sprawling stone mansion nestled among ancient oak trees with manicured grounds stretching in all directions. It looked like something from another century, another world. That's the Pierce estate? She asked, unable to keep the awe from her voice. Stonehaven, Gideon confirmed, built by my great-grandfather Alaric in 1925, or rather, he added with a grimace, built with money that should have been Daniel's. The helicopter descended onto a private landing pad at the edge of the property. As they touched down, Eliza noticed an older man in a dark suit waiting beside a vintage Bentley. That's Harrington, Gideon explained, gathering his thing. He's been the estate manager for 40 years. We can trust him. How do you know? Eliza asked wearily. Because he hated my father, Gideon replied with a wry smile. And my father hated him, yet he couldn't fire him because Harrington knows where all the bodies are buried, figuratively speaking. I hope. They disembarked, the helicopter's downdraft whipping Eliza's hair around her face. Harrington approached with perfect composure. Not a silver hair out of place. Pierce, he greeted with a slight bow, then turned to Eliza with undisguised interest. And this must be Miss Hole. Just Eliza's fine, she said, surprised that he knew her name. Harrington knows everything that happens at Stonehaven, Gideon explained. I called ahead to inform him we'd be conducting research in the family archives. Indeed, Harrington agreed, opening the car door for them. I've taken the liberty of airing out the West Wing study and unlocking the archive room. It hasn't been accessed in quite some time. The drive to the main house was short, but revealing. Eliza caught glimpses of tennis courts, a pool house, stables, and gardens that would require an army of groundskeepers to maintain. How many people live here? She asked. Currently, just the staff, Gideon replied. I have an apartment in the city. My father was the last Pierce to live here full-time. After my mother died, I couldn't stand the place. There was a story there. Eliza sensed, but before she could ask, they arrived at the imposing front entrance. The massive oak doors swung open to reveal an entry hall with soaring ceilings, marble floors, and a grand staircase that curved up to the second floor. I'll have lunch prepared for noon, Harrington informed them. The West Wing study is through the main gallery past the library. Gideon thanked him and gestured for Eliza to follow. They walked in silence through rooms filled with priceless artwork, antique furniture, and display cases housing artifacts from around the world. My ancestors were collectors, Gideon explained, noticing her gaze lingering on a particularly disturbing tribal mask. Not always ethically. More things they took that didn't belong to them, Eliza murmured. Gideon didn't argue. The West Wing study was less ostentatious than the rest of the house, a wood panel room with tall windows overlooking the gardens. Bookshelves lined the walls, and a massive oak desk dominated the center. At the far end, a smaller door stood ajar. The archive, Gideon said, nodding toward it. My great-grandfather began the tradition of documenting everything. Ledgers, correspondence, contracts, photographs, the complete history of Pierce Holdings and the family behind it. All except Daniel, Eliza pointed out. Let's see if that's true, Gideon replied, leading the way. The archive room was long and narrow, with floor-to-ceiling shelves on both sides. Metal filing cabinets lined the far wall. Everything was meticulously organized, with typed labels indicating years and contents. Where do we start? Eliza asked, overwhelmed by the sheer volume of material. The beginning, Gideon decided. The earliest records would be from the 1920s, when Alaric established the company. They worked methodically, each taking a section. Eliza started with the correspondence files, while Gideon tackled the corporate ledgers. Hours passed in dusty silence. broken only by the occasional rustle of paper or murmured observation. By mid-afternoon, Eliza's eyes were strained from deciphering faded ink on yellowed paper. She'd found nothing directly referencing Daniel, but had noticed peculiar gaps in the record's missing months, abrupt changes in Alaric's handwriting, letters that referenced conversations with no corresponding documentation. "It's like reading around a black hole," she told Gideon, rubbing her tired eyes. "I can feel the absence of something important." "I'm finding the same thing," Gideon agreed, looking up from a ledger. "Financial discrepancies that suggest funds being diverted, properties purchased under separate accounts, a shadow operation running alongside the legitimate business." He frowned, turning the book toward her. "Look at this entry from June 1922. A significant withdrawal marked only as D settlement." "D for Daniel?" Eliza suggested. "Possible." And here he flipped several pages forward. November 1922, another large sum. D contain. A chill ran through Eliza. Containment. As in ... single quotes, as in institutionalizing someone against their will, Gideon confirmed grimly. They exchanged a look of shared disgust, then returned to their search with renewed determination. Eliza moved on to a set of albums labeled family photographs, hoping to find visual evidence of Daniel's existence. The first album contained formal portraits of Alaric and his wife Beatrice, elegant and severe in their finery. The second showed the construction of Stonehaven, with Alaric supervising workers at various stages. In none of these did Eliza see anyone who might be Daniel. She was about to set aside the third album when a small envelope fell from between its pages. Inside was a photograph, unlike the others, creased and worn, as if it had been carried in a wallet for years. It showed two young men in their early 20s, arms slung around each other's shoulders, grinning with the carefree confidence of youth. One was unmistakably Alaric Pierce. His sharp features and commanding presence were recognizable even in his younger incarnation. The other was taller, leaner, with softer features and eyes that seemed to look beyond the camera, beyond the moment. Eliza turned the photograph over. Written in a flowing script were the words, "Alaric and Daniel, Harvard, 1903, brothers always." Her heart pounding, Eliza called Gideon over. "I found him," she said, handing him the photograph. Gideon stared at the image for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "He was real," he murmured. "Not just a family ghost story." "Brothers always," Eliza quoted from the back. "They look close. Whatever happened between them must have been devastating," Gideon said, still studying the photograph, to go from this to erasing his brother from history. Their moment of discovery was interrupted by a sharp knock. Harrington stood in the doorway, his usual composure slightly ruffled. "Miss Pierce, I apologize for the interruption, but you have a visitor. Mr. Robert Pierce has arrived and is insisting on speaking with you immediately." Gideon tensed. "My cousin is here? Did you tell him I had a guest?" "No, sir," Harrington assured him. "I informed him you were engaged in private research and suggested he return tomorrow. He was ... insistent." Gideon turned to Eliza, his expression grim. "This isn't a coincidence. Robert never comes here unless he wants something." He lowered his voice. "He can't find you here. It would raise too many questions." "What do you want me to do?" Eliza asked, instinctively touching her pocket where the phoenix ring rested in its velvet box. "Harrington will show you to the garden study. It's private, with its own entrance. Wait there until I've dealt with Robert." He hesitated, then added, "And Eliza, keep the photograph." As Eliza followed Harrington through a back corridor, she couldn't shake the sense that they'd disturbed something long buried and that the past was now rushing to catch up with them. The garden study was a charming octagonal room with glass walls overlooking a maze of rose bushes. Eliza paced its perimeter, clutching the photograph of Alaric and Daniel, her mind racing. Who was Robert Pierce? And why was his unexpected arrival so concerning to Gideon? She examined the photograph again, studying Daniel's face. There was something familiar in his features, something she recognized from her own reflection. The same slight upturn at the corner of his mouth, the same thoughtful set to his eyes. Her mother was right, and Daniel was the rightful heir to the Pierce fortune. That made him Eliza's great-great-uncle, a direct blood relative. The sound of raised voices drifted through an open window. Eliza moved closer, careful to stay hidden behind a potted palm. "Absolutely unacceptable, Gideon." A man's voice, cultured and smooth, but clearly agitated. "The board is questioning your priorities. 3 missed meetings this month, and now you disappear to Stonehaven without explanation?" "I wasn't aware I needed to explain my personal time to you, Robert," came Gideon's cool reply. "Or to the board. When Pierce Holdings stock drops 2 points because rumors are circulating that you're planning to sell your majority stake, it becomes my business," Robert countered. "Those rumors are unfounded," Gideon said dismissively. "I have no plans to sell anything." "Then where have you been? What's so important that you've neglected your responsibilities?" There was a pause, and Eliza held her breath. "Family matters," Gideon finally answered. "Nothing that concerns you." Robert's laugh was sharp and disbelieving. "Family matters? You have no family, Gideon. That's why Uncle William left the company to you instead of me, because you had no distractions, no attachments." "Perhaps that's changed," Gideon replied, his tone deliberately provocative. Another pause, longer this time. "What aren't you telling me?" Robert asked, his voice suddenly dangerous. "Have you found someone? Is that what this is about?" "It's time for you to leave, Robert," Gideon said firmly. "You've made your point about the board meetings. I'll be back in the city by the end of the week." "This isn't over," Robert warned. Whatever you're hiding, I'll find out. Footsteps faded, followed by the distant sound of a car engine starting. Eliza exhaled slowly, releasing the tension she hadn't realized she'd been holding. A few minutes later, Harrington appeared at the study door. Pierce asked that you rejoin him in the archives, he said, his expression giving nothing away. Mr. Robert has departed. Eliza followed him back through the maze of corridors, still clutching the photograph. When they reached the archive room, Gideon was standing over a large leather-bound book, his expression troubled. Your cousin seems charming, Eliza commented, closing the door behind her. Gideon looked up, a tight smile appearing briefly. Robert has always resented that my father left the company to me. He runs our charitable foundation, which gives him prestige and a generous salary, but not the power he craves. He said your father chose you because you had no family. No distractions. You were eavesdropping, Gideon observed, not unkindly. Hard not to. He has a carrying voice. Indeed, and he was right, in a way. My father valued focus, commitment to the Pierce legacy above all else. Attachments were weaknesses to be exploited. Gideon's gaze met hers. It's why I never stopped searching for you and Laura. Prove I'm wrong. The admission hung in the air between raw and honest. Eliza looked away first, uncomfortable with the sudden intimacy. I found something while you were gone, Gideon said, gesturing to the book. A private journal belonging to William Pierce, my grandfather. And it contains entries about Daniel, explicit references that confirm he was institutionalized on Alaric's orders. Gideon's voice was tight with controlled anger. It also mentions Owen Calloway. Eliza stepped closer, heart pounding. What does it say about my grandfather? Not much, but it's damning. Gideon pointed to an entry dated October 1968. It says, Calloway problem neutralized. Asset secured. He's no longer a threat. Asset. Eliza repeated, bile rising in her throat. His invention, the turbine. Yes. And there's more. Earlier entries reference Dee's heir and potential claim. Gideon looked up, his expression grim. I think my grandfather was aware that Daniel had a legitimate heir somewhere, someone who could potentially challenge the Pierce claim to the fortune. But Daniel never had children, Eliza said, confused. At least not according to my mother. No, but he could have named someone as his heir. Gideon turned the page, revealing more of William Pierce's spidery handwriting. Listen to this. Dee's ring must be recovered. It contains proof that could destroy everything Alaric built. Eliza's hand went instinctively to her pocket where the phoenix ring rested. Proof? My mother said it was proof, but she never explained exactly how. I think I know, Gideon said, his voice hushed with discovery. The inscription, Owen. What if it's not just a name? What if it's a clue? A clue to what? To whatever documentation Daniel left behind. Proof of his rightful claim as Alaric's older brother and heir. Gideon ran a hand through his hair, thinking aloud. If Daniel knew he was being erased from the family history, he would have wanted to preserve evidence of his existence, his rights. And he entrusted that evidence to my grandfather, Eliza realized, along with the ring that proves his identity. Exactly. Which explains why my grandfather was so desperate to silence Owen Calloway, not just because of the turbine invention, but because he knew about Daniel's true place in the Pierce family. They stared at each other, the implications sinking in. For nearly a century, the Pierce family had been built on Eliza's stolen inheritance, a buried truth. We need to figure out what the ring is pointing to, Gideon said, determination hardening his features. May I see it? Eliza hesitated only briefly before removing the velvet box from her pocket. She opened it, carefully extracting the phoenix ring. It seemed to catch the light differently here in the heart of Pierce territory, the sapphire eye glowing with an almost accusatory intensity. Gideon didn't reach for it, respecting her unspoken boundaries. Instead, he leaned closer, examining the inscription inside the band. Owen, he read aloud. Nothing else? Nothing visible, Eliza confirmed, turning the ring to show the plain interior surface beside the name. Gideon straightened suddenly. Heat, he said, excitement coloring his voice. Old-fashioned invisible ink often responds to heat. You think there's a hidden message? It's worth trying. Gideon looked around the room, then reached for a desk lamp with an incandescent bulb. Hold the ring near this, not touching, just close enough to warm the metal. Eliza did as he suggested, carefully positioning the ring near the hot bulb. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then slowly, faint lines began to appear beside the engraved name numbers, emerging like ghosts on the gold surface. 37-19-42, Eliza read, her voice barely above a whisper. A combination, Gideon said immediately. But to what? A safe? A deposit box? Or coordinates? Eliza suggested. Latitude and longitude. Too short for that. Gideon paced the room, thinking. A combination makes the most sense, but where would Daniel have hidden something that would still be accessible decades later? The answer struck them simultaneously. The Pierce family vault, Gideon said. There's a vault here? Eliza asked, carefully returning the ring to its box. In the basement level. It predates electronic security, uses an old mechanical combination lock. Gideon's expression was a mixture of excitement and trepidation. I've never opened it. My father made it clear it was off limits even to me, and you respected that. Eliza couldn't keep the skepticism from her voice. I never had a reason not to, Gideon replied simply. Until now, as they made their way through the mansion's labyrinthine corridors. Eliza felt a growing sense of unease. They were disturbing secrets long buried, challenging a powerful family's carefully constructed narrative. If her mother was right about the lengths the Pierces had gone to protect their position, they were potentially putting themselves in danger. The entrance to the basement level was hidden behind a bookcase in the main library, a cliche that would have made Eliza smile under different circumstances. Gideon activated a hidden mechanism, and the bookcase swung silently inward, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. "Stay close," Gideon advised, switching on a flashlight. "It's easy to get disoriented down here." The stairs led to a stone corridor that felt older than the house above, with rough-hewn walls and a dirt floor. At the end of the corridor stood a massive steel door, its surface dull with age but still imposing. In the center of the door was a mechanical dial, waiting for the combination that would unlock whatever secrets lay beyond. Gideon's flashlight illuminated the aged steel door, casting long shadows that seemed to dance across the rough stone walls. The vault had been built before Stonehaven itself, he explained, part of an earlier structure that had stood on the property. "My father claimed this door hasn't been opened since his childhood," Gideon said, running his fingers over the tarnished dial. "He told me it contained outdated financial records, nothing worth preserving. Yet he made sure you knew it was off-limits," Eliza pointed out. "Another lie to protect the family's secrets." Gideon stepped back. "You should do it. The combination came from your ring. Your legacy." Eliza approached the dial, her heart pounding in her chest. The mechanism was old, but well-maintained, turning smoothly under her touch. She rotated it carefully, following the standard procedure for combination locks: right to the first number, left to the second, right again to the third. 37, 19, 42. A heavy click echoed through the corridor. Gideon reached forward, grasping a large handle and pulling. The door swung open with surprising ease, as if it had been waiting all these years for the right person to unlock its secrets. The beam of the flashlight revealed a small chamber beyond, no larger than a walk-in closet. Unlike the rough-hewn corridor, the vault was finished with smooth marble walls and flooring. In the center stood a single pedestal, and upon it rested a leather portfolio and a wooden box. "That's it?" Liza whispered, almost disappointed by the simplicity of the contents. "Sometimes the most dangerous secrets are the least impressive looking," Gideon replied, stepping carefully into the vault. He directed the flashlight at the portfolio first. It was bound in red leather, cracked with age but still intact. A single word was embossed in gold on the cover: "Testament." "Daniel's testament," Eliza breathed, reaching for it. The portfolio was heavier than it looked, filled with thick pages of what felt like parchment. Eliza carefully opened it, revealing handwritten texts in a flowing, elegant script. The first page bore a simple heading: "**, the testament of Daniel Owen Pierce, rightful heir to the Pierce legacy. 1960 **. He was alive in 1960, Gideon noted, sounding surprised. "My family's records suggested he died in the 1930s. "More lies," Eliza said, turning the page. The testament began with a formal declaration of Daniel's identity as the firstborn son of Edward Pierce and rightful heir to the Pierce fortune. It continued with a detailed account of his childhood, his close relationship with his younger brother Alaric, and their shared dreams for the family business. But as Daniel described the events of 1922, the tone changed. Alaric had secretly married Beatrice Beaumont, daughter of a wealthy industrialist who disapproved of Daniel's artistic temperament and progressive views. Under Beaumont's influence, Alaric began to see Daniel as an obstacle to his ambitions. The betrayal, when it came, was devastating in its calculation. Daniel had been drugged at a family dinner, then transported to a private asylum under a false name. Declared mentally unstable and dangerous, he was held against his will while Alaric assumed control of the family business. The only person who knew the truth was their mother, who had smuggled Daniel's Phoenix ring to him during her single permitted visit. "My God," Gideon murmured, reading over Eliza's shoulder. "It's worse than we imagined." Daniel's account, describing his years in the asylum, his eventual escape, and his life under an assumed identity. He had found modest success as an artist, always careful to stay beyond Alaric's reach. The testament detailed how he had watched from afar as his brother built a corporate empire on the foundation of their father's fortune, a fortune that legally should have passed to Daniel. The most damning passages came near the end, where Daniel described meeting Owen Callaway in 1962. **, Owen Callaway is a man of exceptional brilliance and integrity. He has developed a revolutionary turbine system that could transform the energy industry. Knowing my brother's son, William Pierce, and his ruthless business practices, I warned Owen to protect his invention, but it may already be too late. William has learned of my friendship with Owen and will surely see it as a threat to the Pierce legacy. I have entrusted Owen with my ring, the symbol of my birthright, and instructed him on how to access this vault should anything happen to either of us. Within the accompanying box is proof that cannot be disputed: our father's will, naming me as his primary heir, birth records showing I was the firstborn, and photographs documenting my existence that Alaric tried to destroy. **, if you are reading this, then the time has come for truth to prevail over the Pierce deception. Use these documents wisely. Justice delayed is still justice deserved. **. The testament ended with Daniel's signature, witnessed by Owen Callaway and a notary public. Eliza looked up from the document, meeting Gideon's troubled gaze. "Your entire family fortune, .. single quote," she began, "was built on a crime," he finished, his voice hollow. "Everything I've ever known, ever believed about my heritage, was a lie." Eliza turned to the wooden box, which was secured with a simple brass clasp. Inside, just as Daniel had described, were documents yellowed with age but meticulously preserved. Edward Pierce's will explicitly naming Daniel as his heir. Birth certificates for both brothers, confirming Daniel was the elder by 3 years, and dozens of photographs chronicling Daniel's existence within the Pierce family before his institutionalization. Most damning of all was a letter from Alaric to his father-in-law, Owen Beaumont, dated 1923. Asterisk, the matter has been handled as we discussed. Daniel has been secured at Whitebrook Sanitarium under the name Thomas Gray. The physicians understand he is to be kept sedated and isolated. No visitors except mother, who poses no threat. I have begun the process of consolidating control over father's holding. With Daniel gone, there is no one to challenge our vision for Pierce Industries. Asterisk, this is ... irrefutable, Gideon said, his voice barely audible. Evidence of conspiracy, false imprisonment, theft of inheritance. If this became public ... it would destroy Pierce Holdings, Eliza finished. Everything would have to be returned to Daniel's rightful heirs. But who are his heirs? Gideon asked. Daniel never married, never had children. Eliza carefully returned to the testament, scanning the final pages. Here, she said, pointing to a paragraph near the end. Asterisk, having no children of my own, I hereby name Owen Calloway as my legal heir, to receive all rights, properties, and assets that are rightfully mine as the firstborn son of Edward Pierce. In the event of Owen's death, these rights shall pass to his descendants. Asterisk, Eliza looked up, the implications sinking in. That would be my mother, she whispered. And me. The weight of the revelation seemed to physically affect Gideon. He sat heavily on the vault's marble floor, the flashlight casting strange shadows across his face. Everything I have, he said slowly, legally belongs to you. Before Eliza could respond, the sound of footsteps echoed from the corridor outside. They froze, exchanging alarmed glances. Gideon? A familiar voice called. I know you're down here. Harrington told me everything. Robert Pierce. Take the documents, Gideon whispered urgently to Eliza. There's another way out through the old wine cellar. I'll stall him. Single quotes. Eliza quickly gathered the testament and the box of evidence, clutching them to her chest. What are you gonna do? What I should have done years ago, Gideon replied grimly. Confront the legacy of lies my family built. As Robert's footsteps grew closer, Gideon pointed to a narrow door at the back of the vault. Go. Now, follow the tunnel until you reach a staircase. It will lead you to the greenhouse. Wait for me there, Gideon, please. Eliza, trust me. With one last glance at the man who was her biological father, a man who stood to lose everything because of the document she now held, Eliza slipped through the door into darkness.